I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 464. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. Thank you to those of you who are new, who are just joining us. Hope you'll stick around. Check out the back catalog, all 400, and actually I think it's closer. I looked at the numbers the other day. It's closer to 480 episodes that are out there. But if you include some special things that where I didn't add an official episode number, but 463 previous episodes, so check it all out, armedlutheran.us. Thank you to all of our supporters, the fine folks who are members of the Reformation Gun Club. We don't have any sponsors. We don't have any advertising. We rely on the goodwill and the fine and wonderful support of our patrons, people we call the Reformation Gun Club. You can go to reformationgunclub.com if you would like to find out more, or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. Find out about what that entails. It's basically, putting your money where your mouth is. You want to see the show continue, want to help us keep the lights on. So we take donations through Give, Send, Go, which is a Christian crowdfunding platform. Doesn't have any viewpoint discrimination, and you can give $1, you can give $100, you can give $10, whatever suits you, whatever you're comfortable with giving. We appreciate every penny, and every penny goes to help keep the show going. We really do appreciate it. And by the way, you get invitations to our monthly online hangouts. Last week was our what month is it? Was our October hangout, so we'll be doing another one in November. So as a member of the Reformation Gun Club, you get that, plus lots of other great benefits. So check it out, reformationgunclub.com. Let's see. Today I want to talk to you about something kind of stunning, I think, that came out of the mouth of someone who is typically an anti-gun media figure. But first, before we get to that, I do want to give a huge shout out to all the blue hairs and the octogenarians and the people in inflatable dinosaur costumes and the homely college educated women and the handmade tails, those red costumes, all the people who are cosplay revolutionaries who went out on Saturday to protest, calling for no kings. I just want to say thank you. Great work. We still don't have a king. No king since 1776 and still going strong. I want to thank all of you for your help in keeping King Charles and Lady Camilla at bay. You bunch of absolute sausages. Now, go back to whatever it is you were doing previously. And now for something completely different. Back to what I was originally alluding to as the subject of today's show. Don Lemon. You remember Don Lemon? Me neither. It seems like, I believe he's this gay black dude who used to be an anchor at CNN, but who got canned after making some, what he admitted were inartful comments about then presidential candidate Nikki Haley, about her age. You remember Nikki Haley, right? Yeah, me neither. Anyway, so Don Lemon apparently has a YouTube channel now that he's not at CNN anymore, and he gets together with a bunch of other losers, Jim Acosta and Joy Reid, whom he calls the Dream Team, and they rant about typical leftist, the same kind of stupidity that they did when they were being paid by their respective networks. If you ever thought that Don Lemon was in any way objective, just peruse through his video titles on his YouTube channel, and that will disabuse you very quickly of that misconception. Clearly a leftist hack and always has been. So Lemon, or I think I'm just going to call him Lemonhead. Lemonhead was on this podcast, something called The Left Hook with Wajahat Ali. You remember Wajahat Ali, don't you? No, never heard of him. Anyway, he apparently has a podcast as well, where he interviews people like Don Lemon, who, I mean, it's a leftist circle jerk, basically, where they get together with some of the same losers and America haters and anti-Semites, the same ones that Don Lemon has on his podcast, maybe worse. I scrolled through the featured images, and his guests are basically the Star Wars bar scene of the loony left. But anyway, I digress. Don Lemonhead said some things about the Second Amendment. He was on this guy's podcast in an episode called, I believe, Don Lemon Breaks Silence. It's time to call out MAGA, which is ironic because Don Lemonhead has not been silent at all. I don't know what silence he's breaking, but anyway, I'm not going to fisk that whole episode. There was something that he said about the Second Amendment that I found surprising and ironic and dangerous all at the same time. I'm not going to play the clips of the episode either. I thought about doing that, but I'm going to spare you that because it was bad enough listening to as much as I could stand. Basically, it's 50 some odd minutes of Lemon playing like he's all pissed off and he's finally had enough and he's not going to take it anymore. And he's going to say some things that he's never said because he doesn't care what people think. See? So basically what he says, we'll get to the nut of it. He says that black people, brown people legally in the country, Indian Americans, Mexican Americans, he starts out with black and brown and people of all stripes, he says, and then clarifies with the modifier American, which is important. It's an important distinction because what he says a little later, he says, if you support the Second Amendment and you support the Constitution, you should go out and legally buy a firearm and store it safely and all of that stuff. And to that point, I mean, if all you hear is this one clip and not what he says before it or after it, he sounds a lot like Tony Simon. It's the second is for everyone, right? Go out and exercise your Second Amendment rights. So his initial point is that if you're here legally, you should exercise your rights. And we'll deal with the irony of Don Lemonhead, supporter of gun bans and gun control, calling for people to exercise their Second Amendment rights, which is weird and ironic. But it was also interesting, if you notice, that he excludes the Mexican people from the black and brown. He says black and brown and Mexican, because you got to keep up that stereotype that Mexican Americans are white adjacent, I guess. If you remember the Trayvon Martin shooting, George Zimmerman was labeled by people like Don Lemon as a white Hispanic, but I digress. So there's a lot of others he leaves out. We'll let that slide for now, but basically he's saying, if you are one of these minority groups, go out, exercise your rights, get a gun legally. He says, let's see, here's the quote. If you believe in the Second Amendment, if you believe in the Constitution, black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're Indian American or Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally, get a license to carry legally, which sounds like a reasonable thing to say. You know, get a gun legally. Yes, Totally agree. Get a license to carry legally, he says. Yes, I agree if that's required by your state. I would add to that, even if your state doesn't require it, I still think you ought to do it. If for no other reason than the bare minimum amount of training that you will get is useful if you have a good instructor. But also it's the bare minimum. Remember that. That's not enough. But it also, I think, helps to maintain the statistic, which I think is definitive. Concealed carry permit holders are vastly more law-abiding when it comes to crimes committed with guns. And if there are no permits, there's no distinction, and we all get lumped in with the morons who step out on their porch and pop off warning shots when somebody's stealing their Amazon delivery. But again, I digress. So to this point, we're all pretty much in agreement, right? Exercise your Second Amendment rights. Sounds very reasonable, but then Don Lemonhead goes off the rails. He says, quote, "Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for?" End quote. No. No, 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 no. Hell no. Wrong. First off, Indian Americans, Mexican Americans, Black Americans, no Americans are being taken away in the middle of the night by the government, by ICE. That's who he's suggesting. What he's suggesting here is that colored folks should arm up to defend themselves against ICE, and which, let's not forget, stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So no American citizen is getting hauled off in the night without due process by ICE. Anybody who might be getting accidentally rounded up, probably a good reason why that's happening, and they're not getting deported. So there's no reason to start popping off rounds at ICE in the middle of the night, or to worry that you're going to be if you are an American citizen, of colored skin or not. So what we've got here is, because what ICE is doing is they're rounding up illegal immigrants, not legal ones. And this is a distinction that Don Lemonhead makes here. He is trying to say that legal American citizens are being rounded up and detained, which is false. He's inciting violence against law enforcement by suggesting falsely, not just suggesting, he's outright lying. This is a big Eighth Commandment thing here. And in my opinion, a Fifth Commandment thing, because you're encouraging people to arm up to defend themselves against something that's not happening. But saying that black and brown people are being rounded up by ICE without due process is a lie. It's pathetic. It is incredibly dangerous, considering what we've seen in places like right here in Dallas, where a moron with a gun took pot shots at an ICE facility and, ironically, killed detainees instead of ICE agents because he couldn't tell the difference. And the real irony here is that in a different time, when Democrats ran Washington, D.C., Lemon would certainly not support the Second Amendment and ownership of firearms for defense against tyranny. He would agree with clowns like Eric Swalwell or Joe Biden, who suggested that if you're going to stand up against government tyranny, you need a tank, you need an F-16, you need a nuclear bomb. But now that ICE is arresting and deporting the illegal immigrants who are the base of the Democrat Party, the people who are counted in the census, who help the Democrat Party have the number of seats in Congress that they do, well, it's time to stand up to government tyranny, you see. He's all for the Second Amendment now. It's funny how that works. Don Lemonhead is leaving us with no doubt about why he got canned by CNN. He is clueless. He is a reactionary retard who doesn't think before he speaks in public. That's what got him into trouble in the first place, and he hasn't learned his lesson. Because here are the kinds of people who are actually being rounded up by ICE. Human traffickers, murderers, rapists, drug dealers, members of MS-13 and Trendy Aragua, these violent foreign gangs from South America, smugglers, and, as it turns out, did you see this in the news? Terrorists who participated in the rape and murder of 1,200 Israeli civilians on October 7th, 2023. Yes, you heard that right. In Louisiana, the FBI arrested a man from Gaza who participated in the slaughter of 1,200 innocent Jews in the south of Israel on October 7. Mahmoud Amin Yaqub al-Maktudi Mohammed bin al-Mohammed bin Sinwar bin Laden or whatever was living his best life in, I think it's Lafayette, Louisiana. So this is a story from Fox News. Al-Muqtadi is accused of being a member of Hamas and the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine's armed wing, the National Resistance Brigades, and commanding or coordinating fighters who joined Hamas units for the incursion. That would be the invasion on October 7th, 2023. Cell tower data placed his phone inside Israel near Kibbutz Kfar Aza, one of the sites where Hamas and its supporters carried out brutal massacres. He was also captured in multiple intercepted cell calls and recordings talking about moving fighters and arms into Israel, and was recorded celebrating the kidnappings that occurred that day. Evidence also allegedly showed him in photographs and videos taken around the time of the attack in combat gear, carrying weapons and standing with other armed militants, sometimes wearing NRB insignia and Hamas-style headbands. He also praised and justified the violence on social media and in messages after the fact. An FBI affidavit includes an image showing him holding what appears to be a handgun and a magazine inside his Tulsa, Oklahoma apartment. So not only was he part of the October 7th massacres, he somehow got into the United States and had a gun. Investigators said additional photographs showed his children handling that same gun. As well as the terror charges, al-Muqtadi is accused of lying on his U.S. visa application to conceal his ties to terrorist groups. Really? People lie on their visa applications? Well, that color me shocked. My question is, how many other terrorist shitbags are in the United States as a result of our years of lax immigration enforcement, particularly under Joe Biden? Muqtadi says, getting back, reading from the article at Fox News, al-Muqtadi was issued a green card in 2024 via the U.S. Embassy in Cairo and stated on his application form that he intended to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and work in car repairs and food services. According to Customs and Border Protection records, he entered the United States on September 12, 2024 via Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, right here in good old Texas. So no, Don Lemonhead, Black and brown Americans have nothing to fear from ICE. Foreign terrorists and gangbangers do. But Don wants to protect them, you see, because they'll vote Democrat. And there's another reason that this call to arm up black and brown people to buy guns against ICE is the reason this is troubling. Another reason it's troubling. Remember the guy who was on the school board, who was the school board superintendent, actually, in Des Moines, Iowa? The one who was arrested by ICE because, lo and behold, he was an illegal alien who had falsified his entire background. And nobody did a background check on all of his BS claims about who he was, and he got hired. to run the schools in Des Moines, Iowa. If a guy can come into this country illegally, falsify his identity documents, get a $300,000 a year job with a metropolitan school board in the middle of flyover country, you think they could possibly get their hands on guns too? Not just buying guns from Riri down the corner in the hood, but going into gun stores and passing a background check and walking out with a firearm? I guarantee they can. So Don Lemon calling for black and brown people to arm up to fight ICE is a permission slip for illegals posing as Americans to do the exact same thing. Because Americans have nothing to fear from ICE, illegals who pretend to be Americans do. So Don then lets his Trump derangement flag fly by claiming that coming to the country illegally is just a misdemeanor. And he slips up and says nobody is illegal, and then stutters. After realizing what he's just said, he then stutters his way into an attack on Trump, claiming basically that, coming here illegally and falsifying your identity and taking American jobs and hiding from the consequences of masterminding a terrorist attack, selling drugs or raping and murdering people, killing people with a semi-truck because you can't freaking read English. That's nowhere near the level of crime that Trump, the criminality of Donald Trump, he says. So his point is that what ICE is doing is tyranny. And the reason that brown people should buy guns is so that they can fight back against that tyranny. And he piles on this to suggest that if we were consistent, we conservatives, see, we're hypocrites because we don't see this as tyranny ourselves, because we talk about the Second Amendment and defense against tyranny, but we're not standing up against Trump and the tyranny of ICE. And because he's tyrannically rounding up and deporting murderers and rapists who are here illegally, that's tyranny, apparently. Don thinks that if Joe Biden had been doing this, and he says this in not exactly the same words, but he basically suggests that if this were a Democrat administration, you and I, conservatives, would be up in arms. And that's again where Don Lemonhead is wrong, because we were begging for Joe Biden to do this for 4 years. And if he had, he would probably still be president. What Don Lemonhead doesn't recognize is, and here's the other point, when we, real guns people, real supporters of the Second Amendment, when we talk about defending against tyranny, we're not talking about protecting ourselves from cops when they come to arrest us for the crimes that we actually commit. The government upholding the law is not tyranny. Tyranny is when the government violates your rights. And your rights kind of go out the window when you break the law. Most of them. Aside from, your right not to incriminate yourself or not to be shot or tortured. But if you're an illegal alien, those are basically the only rights you've got. We can't torture you. We can't shoot you. But basically, you don't really have any rights under the Constitution. You got no right to be here. So no, Don, ICE agents enforcing immigration laws is not tyranny. Now, you could argue, well, what if the government says, I don't know, let's say, what if the government outlaws going to church? Oh, wait, they already tried that. Bad example. But when that happened, you didn't see Second Amendment supporters buying guns and standing in front of churches threatening to shoot cops. You didn't see media people on the right suggesting that churchgoers, you white Christians out there, you need to go buy guns because just in case the government comes to your door and tries to shut your church down. No, that didn't happen. What if the government made it illegal, I don't know, to go out in public without a mask? Oh, wait. Bad example again. They already did that. Again, Nobody in the Second Amendment community was taking up guns to stop it. What if the government threatened to put you in jail or to fine you or to fire you from your job if you didn't get a vaccine? Oh, wait. They did that. And again, nobody showed up to the CDC with guns. Oh, but somebody did shoot up the CDC this year, and it was a crazy leftist Democrat. Bad example. Sorry. Bad examples abound, I guess. The point is, if people really were being arrested Gestapo style, Stasi style, with no due process and hauled off in the middle of the night, people would be up in arms. And if it were happening, it would most likely be Democrats doing it. Because we have recent examples to prove it. To a point, I agree with Don Lemon. All Americans of all stripes, colors, and creeds should go out and get a gun legally. To use it, learn to use it, and store it responsibly, yes. But not because the government is coming to get you. Because the government is not coming to get you, and they're not coming to save you. Just look at the crime that Democrats across the country allow to happen because we can't put our voters in prison. That would be bad because they're disadvantaged or whatever. How many times do we see prosecutors and mayors advocate for low bail, no bail, $1 bail, lenient sentencing for violent criminals simply because they're brown-skinned? And then when those brown people go out and commit more crimes, they're let back out on the streets again. I saw a press conference this week from the CMPD back in my old home state of North Carolina, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department in Charlotte, North Carolina. The same place where Irina Zurutska, the Ukrainian immigrant, was stabbed to death by a piece of crap on the metro, a guy who had over 40 previous crimes under his belt. That place, you remember? And the mayor of Charlotte made excuses for why he wasn't behind bars. Charlotte used to be a great city, but now it's run by morons and race hustlers mainly. Well, this past week, apparently, according to this press conference, CMPD arrested a 15-year-old kid, 15 years old, in possession of multiple firearms, and who was caught searching the internet for ways to ambush and kill police, I believe. Turns out that 15-year-old had 111 arrests. Since 2023, he had been arrested 111 times. And that, my friends, is why Americans of all stripes should be exercising their Second Amendment rights. Buying a gun legally, carrying it legally. Not because government agents might show up at your door in the middle of the night, but because the government has absolutely no interest, at least local and state governments, those run by Democrats, they have no interest in protecting you from actual tyranny, the tyranny of the minority, the tiny minority of citizens who are repeatedly committing crimes and terrorizing their communities and then are repeatedly turned back out onto the streets in the name of social justice. So Don Lemonhead continues to be a moron. Losing his job at CNN obviously hasn't changed that. If anything, it's made it worse because now he has no restrictions on the stupidity that he spews. And his advice now is not only stupid, it's dangerous. He wants to convince you, he wants to lie to you, to convince you if you are, as he says, brown or black, that the government's coming for you because of your color of your skin. And therefore you need to exercise your Second Amendment rights so that you can shoot the cops. And the truth is, though, that if the cops are coming to your door at the middle of the night, it's almost always, with very, very rare exceptions, because of you, not because of some kind of government tyranny. So keep that in mind. But yes, arm up for your own protection, because you are your own first responder. The government's not coming to help you. But they are rounding up losers and reprobates, gangbangers and murderers and rapists. They're just not doing it fast enough because radical left-wing judges and morons like the No Kings movement and Antifa are standing in the way. Okay, so that's all I have for today. That's what was on my mind. If you have any thoughts on any of this nonsense, anything I said or anything Don Lemonhead said, let me know. Visit the feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. Leave us a message. We would love to hear from you. Don't know what we're going to be doing next week for episode 465, but whatever it is, hope you'll be here with us for it. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.